Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Fox Sage and we are back with our new fanfic. Which is, what if Naruto was disowned by his family and he was adopted by the raikage? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button. And please subscribe to the channel, it motivates me to upload more fanfics like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfic. Pain was something familiar, lack of pain wasn't. Naruto actually opened his eyes half expecting the demon's words to become the truth, that he'd be foaming from his mouth for the agonizing and hellish pain. He was surprised, instead, when he saw the contraption on his right arm starting to glow red, then beginning to creak. He kind of expected a warning of sorts, before it tore apart, something like a hidden voice in his mind, a yell at him to protect his eyes, anything. Still it seemed that his relationship with the Kyuubi was going to be a tacit one. He wasn't talking to him, and Naruto clearly didn't want to talk to the beast again. He had a feeling that between a young 11-years-old boy and a nine-tailed demon clearly older than him by centuries, he'd be the one to get conned. Still, he had to stick by the principle of not tearing apart the seal. It wasn't like Bee and the Hachibi, those two were friends, and once, in the Waterfall of Truth, in Kumo, he had even met the Eight Tails. That's where he had learned not how to harness the power of the Kyuubi, but how to at the very least keep it in check, so that his chakra control, utterly horrible till then, had skyrocketed in the next week of training. Quality over quantity was good, quality with quantity would have been preferable. The noise of the chakra absorber reaching its physical limit were barely audible, but being in the same prison cell as the spiked blonde boy made it easy to pick them up for Yukie, who stared at her fellow prisoner and his broken legs, with a slightly sympathetic look. Maybe that fool of a Sandayu Asama had hired Kumo Ninja to free her, and take over once more the snow country. It was a futile attempt. She hadn't wanted to come over this damn hateful country, which had taken everything precious from her, but had been forced to by the movie director and the contract she had signed. Obviously, the hope of getting through the entire movie thing without attracting her uncle's attentions had been for nothing. She had been captured, the movie crew had obviously run away for their safety, and she had given up her pension to Dodo. She was going to leave that prison the moment her thrice kami-be-damned uncle would find the weapon he was talking about, but she wasn't hoping on that, probably, he'd have her executed. So she was sulking, when the Kumo boy, his legs broken, had been thrown in, the same Kumo boy who now had slowly opened her eyes and was doing his best to keep the contraption away from his face, as, with a final creak, it broke off, with a small puff of smoke. Thank Kami it didn't explode. Naruto muttered. I dosed the chakra into it. It could have exploded, had I rushed it. The snarling voice in the back of his head muttered. Oh, for Kami's sakes no. Good. So now Naruto had a voice in his head. As if the day couldn't get any worse than that. You accepted my chakra in your coils, should I have mentioned the 96% of possibility of this happening? The fox demon was grinning. Actually, he could have simply rushed the chakra to have the boy's right hand explode, but then he'd have to do with a container who wasn't battle proficient, with only one arm. Sure, he could train to overturn the weakness, but why break a perfectly functional tool, if you can avoid it? Yeah, you should have. Naruto muttered once more, rolling his eyes over, as he gritted his teeth. This time, he actually felt pain, as his bones realigned themselves, the wounds closing, the infections being battled off and the muscles getting back into their normal shapes. Yukie saw small tendrils of red chakra move through the boy's body, aiming at his grievously injured legs, and mending them back into an acceptable state, one which she could, at the very least, stare without turning green. The strange soliloquy of the boy had her intrigued, too, but she decided not to be too picky on it. A lot of ninjas had those strange things, battle scars, they called them. So, are you going to get me out of here? She snapped at him. Maybe she shouldn't have, After all, he was someone who had been trained to kill, as a ninja, and furthermore, maybe the boy being weaponless wasn't meaningless, maybe he faked being easy to capture just to get her out of there. I don't know. Naruto replied, looking at her with his clear blue sky eyes, you're not exactly friendly, and I'd rather not be weighted down if I have to escape from this place. Didn't Asama-san pay your team to save me? Yukie was hesitant now. Maybe the brat was simply a brat, he still had his headband protector from Kumo, but then again, he could have picked it up somewhere. Maybe he was a ninja from Kumo, but just not hired by Asama. Who? The question, asked innocently, made Yukie's heart plummet. No way out of there because of being paid. This boy didn't care or didn't seem to care, his eyes taking a suddenly steel in them, as he stiffened. Naruto heard something moving, deep in the corridor, a noise of a key in a keyhole, of chains rattling, of a door slamming open, then, the appearance of a man, with a horribly angry face on him, long black hair that reached his shoulders, with cold gray eyes and a wide nose. Really? His nose was something out of the fairy tales, about how horrible a nose could grow, if it grew out wrong. 2 guards were with him, both had their hands on a pair of chains, and some manacles. Seems like the key works only with your blood, Koyuki. Very well, I'll have to bring you out for a stroll, and maybe this Kumo ninja here will come too, just to make sure he doesn't pull anything strange. Dodo. Just let me go. You can keep this damn country for yourself if you want it so badly. Koyuki snapped back at her uncle. Naruto had a slightly puzzled look on his face. Didn't the girl say her name was Yukie? Just to let another Sandayu come around and bring you back here. With you dead, that pathetic excuse of a rebellion will finally be over. Now, grab them. As the door of the cell opened up, Naruto, who had silently kept both his hands behind his back, dashed. He didn't dash to save Koyuki, or to disable the guards. He jumped on the wall to the side of the cell, and then jumped again, right fist ready, catching Dodo by surprise as the fist connected with the man's incredibly enormous nose. Really, it occupied a damn half of his face. He didn't stop to fight. He was a ninja, not a samurai. He kept dashing towards the exit, glad that they hadn't closed the door of the prison cells. Go after him, Dodo practically screeched, as he grabbed with strength the arm of Koyuki, sending his minions to do his job. The 2 guards grabbed a kunai in both their hands, and then dashed off, to pursue the blonde spiked guy, who had closed the prison's door behind him, the iron prison door. As one of the 2 guards grabbed a hold of the door's handle, sparks of electricity jolted through the man's body, sending him on a set of high-pierced shrieks as he finally managed to remove his hand from the door, falling backwards, twitching for the electricity still running through his body. The 2nd guard stood back, surprised, before Dodo, rolling his eyes over, raised his right hand at the corridor in front of him, not caring for the useless fallen guard and the other one who was still on her feet. Bird, snake, monkey, horse, dog, Hyoten, Kokuryu Bofusetsu, as the ice release, black dragon blizzard spewed forward from the ice that adorned the prison's wall. It crashed against the door and the 2 unlucky guards, killing them but at the same time sending the door to crash loudly against the opposite wall. Move, pathetic excuse of a woman. As Dodo snarled at Koyuki, he started pulling her towards the train's hangar in his fortress. Koyuki did try to rebel, but he was simply too strong, while she was simply too frail to do much, except whimper and follow, though she did try to hit him a couple of times. Her knuckles hurt when they impacted against something underneath the man's vest, an armor of sorts, probably. I've got a chakra signature. C actually yelled that out. To hell with this country's ninjas, as Yugito and B were more than enough to handle them. Where is the damn brat? I'm killing him this time. Yugito literally roared. There was a mixture of anger, anxiety, but also a hint of relief in knowing that her adopted brother was fine. He'd still get slapped to death, then hugged to death, then slapped once more. The bros gotta go. As B finished his rapping, he punched straight through a snow ninja, sending him to crash against a neatly pile of other snow ninjas. Didn't they know we were passing through? Darui queried, as he electrocuted a couple more of snow ninjas, after having happily doused them with a water jutsu. He's a couple of miles from here, to the west. C added. How did he cover that much distance in less than an hour? Yugito was perplexed, but shook her head, as she sent a couple of scorched enemies onto the big pile of defeated ninjas. Doesn't matter, yo-ho. We have to move to save a bro. As B gave a knuckle straight into the teeth of the last remaining snow ninja, the rest of the group nodded. As they dashed, though, Yugito heard C muttering something to Darui, who nodded. Why was Darui with them to begin with? He had said he had a mission in the same direction as them, and had to tag along, but, Raikage's orders, he wasn't to speak about what it was about. The rest of them had shrugged. Darui was Darui after all. He certainly felt it as a pain, not being able to speak about it, and maybe he was the most unnerved one of the situation. Still, he had decided to tag along to watch Naruto train, and he was probably wasting time to go and save him, even though he actually could have already been on his way. Well, the blonde boy was kind of the mascot of the team, and of Kumo. Half of the boy's energy were directed in helping the villagers, and the other half in mercilessly prank the bossy ones. In Kumo, there was probably one person who outright hated the boy, and that was more because that person in particular hated B, and Naruto was a sort of limb of the bigger Jinchuriki. C assumed a perplexed expression, after a moment of dashing, starting to swiftly change its course, steering right. He's moving fast, really fast, was all he muttered. How much fast are we speaking about? Yugito was actually perplexed, as a thought crossed both hers and B's mind. Don't worry, cat. I doubt the boy has gone berserk. B replied, reading into the worried face of the Nibi Jinchuriki. Yugito didn't reply, but she hoped that too. The clouds, high above them, began turning dark, as if tuned to the thoughts that were crossing the Kumo ninjas' minds, and a snowstorm suddenly started becoming a reality, as the first snow crystals started silently falling downwards. A loud piercing noise caught the attention of the group, mere minutes later, and the shinobis stopped on their tracks, seeing how a train was actually moving on the snow, without tracks, and seemed all too keen on running over them if they stayed where they were. Let me guess. Naruto's in trouble and he's in there. Yugito muttered. Stand back, my fellows. Let my fist the enemy mellow. I'm da Hachibi Jinchuriki. No train will stop my. As B rapped, he slowly brought his right hand behind, as the others jumped a bit backward, not wanting to believe, but knowing full well it was the case, that B was going to stop that train barehanded. Naruto just cursed his luck. It had to either be that, or karma. Probably the latter. He promised to himself that, if he ever found another girl in need of a hand, he'd help her out. Sure, he had thought that a dark, but wide place would be the perfect spot to wait for rescue, until the lights had turned on, and he had dashed to the safest place, which turned out to be the top of a train. That to Naruto looked nothing more than a metallic contraption of enormous size, and that was damn cold. Especially for him who was barely in a t-shirt and his boxers. The only thing he thanked Kami for was that his forehead protector was still with him, where hidden inside was a small pocket knife, the emergency weapon, and that he was used to the cold, so his few hairs were actually thicker than the norm, not enough to avoid him muttering curses every time a bare part of his body touched with the cold surface. He saw the color leave his hands, that were turning bluish with time, but couldn't do much, as the train began actually moving, forcing him to hold on to a metal bar as the train rolled outside, drifting the snow apart. Then, with the wind slapping at his face, he began to focus. He could at the very least try and avoid getting his face frozen by the wind. If he concentrated enough, he was sure he could pull something. The first thought went to use a wind jutsu, of which he unluckily knew only one, which would serve no purpose, as he'd have to clap his hands, lose the grab on the railing of the train, and plummet in the middle of the cold white snow till death would claim him, or the wolves, or Yugito Onichan. Thinking back, maybe the wolves weren't bad. He had faith in C's capacities to sense him, but he didn't know how far he was from them, nor how much C couldn't actually be precise in pinpointing him, especially now that he was moving that fast. He could feel his hands starting to go numb, a surprise it hadn't happened before. You could ask for help. There it was again, that damn snotty fox. I am not snotty. I am the Kyuubi, and you, Kit, are in need of a hand. What did he want? Hot ramen, yeah, that was what he wanted. It was nice, it was warm, and it had been the first warm thing he had ever eaten. He still recalled that fondly. Typical, instead of asking for some chakra you think about ramen. I hate you, kid. The sentiment is, it's, well, the same. Naruto fumbled, his tongue felt dry, maybe he could lick some ice off the train without letting go. Oh yes, please, like you know what it's like to be chained to someone for the rest of your life. I was chained once. For a long time, I understand what it means to lack freedom. That's why I have a dream. He had to keep himself awake. Better to talk with the fox than close his eyes and fall off. You still had a choice though. You could have rebelled, you could have told them to leave you alone, or you could have left the orphanage. The fox was kind of enjoying smashing down all the words of the kid. It had been a while since she had last talked with someone. I'm going to be the raikage. Then, Naruto started slowly clenching his teeth, as he pulled his arm forward, in an effort to get to the side of the train without falling. I'm going to protect everyone who cared for me. With a strong pull, he reached the side of the train, just in time to see something that made him pale even more. Oh Kami, I hate karma. The Hachibi's right fist connected with the front of the train, and as B in his Biju's form slowly was pushed backward, so did the train come to an halt, but not before sending Naruto flying forward, screaming to the top of his lungs. As he was about to fall on the ground, he groaned, sure that, with his luck, he'd end up hitting a rock hidden under the snow, or even worse, some kunai forgotten there from a previous battle or war. He closed his eyes, readying himself for the impact against the hard surface, which never came, as he landed head first in something bouncy, and, at the very least, warm. Oh Kami, he's as cold as an icicle. He'll freeze my tentacle like that. Brr. The Hachibi actually liked to jest, as he slowly deposited the nearly frozen to death boy into the hands of Yugito, who proceeded to grab a blanket and envelop him in it, while thanking the fact that the boy had left his bag to them at camp, and he had a spare set of clothes in it. The train, stopped on his tracks, had a couple of really scared snow ninjas coming out, followed by a man in a strange black chakra armor, who was holding a kunai in front of a really scared girl, and the lot had no idea, none at all, of what was happening there. Kumo ninjas, you will not stop me from achieving the perfect weapon. As Dodo yelled that, kunai near the throat of Yukie, for the first time, an evil and dark aura shrouded the area. Yukie was afraid, more because she saw the boy that had been captured back with the Kumo ninjas, being handled with care, as it seemed, to her eyes at least, that he had simply gone and get reinforcements to then help her. That misunderstanding actually made her start to think that, if a boy went as far as sacrificing himself to the cold, just to save her, maybe she should have remained into the snow country as its daimyo. Yugito turned to see Naruto's blue eyes replaced by dark, red ones, as his gaze was fixed on the man and his words, his canine's teeth strangely elongated, his whiskers marks more pronounced, but more than that, his killer intent, so intense it nearly made Darui display something different from boredom on his face. C felt sick, feeling the vile chakra that seemed to be pouring out of the boy. You should have chosen a better choice of words, was all that B muttered, before calling back the Hachibi. Tell hello to the kid from me, was all the Eight Tails said, before re-entering B's body. What is it? You think you can scare me, huh? Dodo smirked. It was clear those were only show-offs. He had no idea what a Jinchuriki was, too busy living a luxurious life and searching for the weapon, but, worst of all, not knowing that he was already dead. The pocket knife, the emergency weapon of Naruto, was in truth made of a chakra metal, which reacted strongly to elemental affinities. Thanks to Naruto being a natural wind user, he could actually increase his pocket's knife reach with chakra. In his unreasoning state, where he simply let his emotions wash over him, as he was too tired to think straight, someone had said a pair of words that had made him click. The next moment he was no longer in the winter blanket that Yugito had given him to warm himself. He didn't need that warmth. He needed another type of warmth, the warmth of fresh blood gushing out from a freshly made wound. As his pocket knife slashed into Dodo's throat, having Naruto actually appeared behind him in a flicker of pure speed, and nothing else, blood exploded like a fountain, as it sprayed all over the white snow, changing its color to crimson. What was worse, was that nobody stopped the boy from actually tearing apart Dodo's body, blood suddenly covering the boy in various parts, as he finally took his time to turn his gaze, still red, around, seeing the girl, Yukie. She had lied to him, but she was a worthless prey. The Kumo ninja were his friends, yes. The snow ninja on the other side. As they cowered, and some made steps to turn around and start running, Naruto was already on them, laughing maniacally in glee. He needed their blood and he needed their death, for he was a monster who could feel emotions only in slaughter. Darui looked expressionless at the slaughter, sighing. Sorry you're seeing this, he muttered to the girl, who nodded by habit, her face pale as she had brought her hands to her mouth. You're Yukie Fujika's, the famous actress, right? I watched some of your films. Yugito whispered, moving closer to the girl. As Yukie wanted to scream, ask them what was wrong with them for not stopping the boy, she looked into the other woman's eyes and said nothing, as the eyes of that woman were as burdened with grief as those of the other Kumo ninjas, barring those of the big muscled man, who had shades on. Naruto. The yell snapped him out of his mental state. It was his name, right? Naruto. Not monster, or demon. Naruto. Who had called him? Turning his head around, he saw B, his uncle, stare at him, and gesture him to move closer to him. He turned for a moment, looking at the crying snow ninja whom he had broken the legs, in an ironic meaning of what they had dared to do to him. He wanted to give the finishing blow, but again, he was called. Naruto. Enough is enough. Well, he couldn't always have everything from life. He turned around again, walking slowly till he was in front of B, who looked back at him. Naruto, B whispered gently, one last time. Naruto stared back, his eyes jolting to life as he looked around, surprised as he recollected his thoughts. Did I do this? He whispered, sadness appearing over his entire face. Well bro, you've packed a punch. Taught a lesson to the bunch. Nothing's bad. No need to be sad. As B rapped, smiling, he brought his right fist forward. Comma and bro, don't let a bro hangin'. Naruto smiled meekly, raising his own right fist, and fist bumping. Good to have ya back. Yukie didn't know what to say, so, she resorted to do the most polite thing she could think of, thank you for saving me. She bowed, slightly blushing, while she looked with lost eyes at the manly form of B. Yugito rolled her eyes over, grabbing the blanket once more, and surrounding Naruto with it. You are so going to get punished, when we get a moment of rest. Yugito Onichan. That wasn't my fault. Naruto pouted, making his best puppy eyes, already forgetting about the slaughter, or the dead bodies, around them. You didn't check your surroundings, it was your fault. C pointed that out. Yeah, definitively, Darui added, nodding. Well then, let's bring the Missy somewhere safe. Let us take a nice cafe. Let us go somewhere warmer. We've still have a mission on our roster. B rapped, earning himself a perplexed look from Naruto. Roster and roaster are different things, bro. He stated. Damn, was all that B said, while the other's sweat dropped, before either grinning or chuckling. As it turned out, as the ninjas of Kumo left a couple of days later than planned, the now recalled Land of Spring, Yukie's real name was indeed Koyuki. Furthermore, she was actually the daughter of the daimyo, thus making her the new daimyo, and the perfect weapon, a name that no one ever dared pronounce again, was in truth a spring generator. A thing that made Naruto happier, as he spent the days resting and recuperating from the harsh cold temperatures that had left him numb at the extremities of his limbs, that, and the repeated battering that Yugito had inflicted upon him, guilty of having made them all worried. The ninjas had gently passed on the fact that Koyuki had misunderstood their intentions, figuring out that it was far better to have a daimyo on their good side, than not. B chuckled like an idiot for most of the rest days, thinking about how the raikage was going to stop drinking sake, when he realized that a team led by him had actually managed to bring an alliance to Kumo from the land of snow. As they departed, their next stop turned out to be Yugito, a hot spring village. They reached the not-walled hot spring village by the end of the fourth day of travel, and by then, Naruto had become quite able in delivering near-fatal amounts of electricity into his hands, a fact of which he was pretty proud. Yeah, if only you actually knew how to discharge it all without having it linger around, Yugito scoffed, especially because, being the only one with long hair, albeit tied in a ponytail, it made her tail stick upwards, a really funny fact, that made her start to think that Naruto was doing it on purpose, rather than by accident. As Naruto let sparks run across his hands, from one to the other, he began chuckling. He'd never admit it, but he kind of enjoyed knowing that he could move Yugito's hair up and down by simply increasing or decreasing the chakra poured in the jutsu. These were the type of jutsus he enjoyed the most. It wasn't much about control, which still helped, but about quantity. The more chakra, the better the technique turned out to be. So, in a certain way, it always resulted in a perfect jutsu. He only needed more practice. A slap on the head later and they were taking rooms in the only inn of the small village of Yugito, which obviously had separated hot springs for males and females. Be nice, and don't peek, especially you see. Yugito harshly muttered, as she entered the female side of the hot baths. A nice soak before dinner wasn't bad at all. Naruto raised an eyebrow, looking at C, who shook his head with a loud sigh. Just because I'm a sensor ninja doesn't mean I have to peek. He muttered, feigning offense, as he entered the male side of the baths. B grinned as he followed, Naruto and Darui behind, and, after washing off the grime and dirt with a couple of buckets of water, they actually entered the hot spring baths, that were separated from the female side by a set of bamboo stalks, tied together by rope. They weren't alone in the hot springs, as an elderly 50-something-year-old man was scribbling down something, giving his back to the Kumo ninjas, and every now and then chuckling something. He wore his long spiked white hair in a strange ponytail that resembled more an otter's tail. The wounds on his back actually made him a probable ninja, or ex-ninja, but being weaponless, like the rest of the Kumo ninja, didn't classify him as a menace. So Gaki, how's it going with the Raiden techniques? As Darui queried, Naruto chuckled and was about to demonstrate it, when C grabbed his hand with a sigh. We're soaked in the water, please, refrain from physically showing off. Aha, come on, a little bit of electricity never killed someone. B laughed. If you try anything I'm coming over to kill you. A female infuriated voice yelled from the other side of the baths. Bro, we got Yugito Onichan angry, she's going to have wrinkles. Naruto replied with a grin. I heard you boy, followed by a set of snarls and growls. Jiraiya sighed, as he shook his head and kept writing his next novel. He had been following a trail left by his spy network that was more than cold, dead cold. Thankfully Minato had closed down Route and grabbed their mission scrolls, then, coupled with knowing Naruto's codename, Monster, he had discovered his first and only mission for Route outside of Konoha, to kill an elderly lady to press an anti-Konoha counselor of Odo into silence. Ruthless as Danzo was, the kid had barely been 6 years old by then, and already, reading all the notes partaking his training, he had shivered. At age 6, Naruto was more a ninja than the rest of the academy graduates. Jiraiya had no doubt the boy was still alive, though he had no clue where he was, as the brutal training imposed on him had made him more than able to fend off even the slickest of brigands. Some things done on him were clearly inhuman, and he couldn't help but grit his teeth every time he had read the scroll, to try and find some peculiar characteristic that would help in tracking him down. From the first mission, he had actually gone to Oto, where, at a great risk, he had managed to come to the understanding that only a group of Kumo ninja was in the area, and thus, following a really fragile-looking trail, he had decided to make his way till Kumo, hoping the fact that he was wearing an oil forehead protector would avoid the people connecting him to Minato, and thus to Konoha. The only problem being the raikage, who knew him too well, having even clashed against him in an effort to help Minato out, though it usually ended in a 1 versus 1 between Konoha's Yellow Flash and the raikage, both fighters of inhuman speed. He knew for a fact that the boy had been subjected to atrocious tortures, thus he should have numerous scars or scar tissue. Then, he knew he had the whiskers marks on his face, blue eyes, and resembled a mini Minato. He also knew, albeit that was a really old knowledge, that he referred to himself as monster or demon. As he kept on scribbling, he realized someone was perching to his side. Not sensing any threat, he supposed it had to be the boy that had previously yelled and been yelled at from the other side, who also was proficient with Raiden techniques, so, maybe it had to be a really impressive Chunin, since normally Genins weren't able to use natural affinity jutsus until they got a firmer grasp of chakra control. He still didn't turn around though, since, when inspiration took him, he had to write till the end. The boy, after a while, swam back to his group, and Jiraiya just barely looked at him with the corner of his eye, blonde wet hair, no scars on his back. He did, however, turn around completely when he realized the other ones were eyeing him pretty puzzled. Hey, that's the Toad Hermit. Yo, old pervert. Killer B was the Raikage's brother, and that much was known even by the dumbest of Kumo, and thus was something that the old Toad Hermit knew. B wasn't it. You're on a mission with your brother. Jiraiya was perplexed, because he didn't think the Raikage would actually leave Kumo unless it was a diplomatic mission, and none of his spies had told him anything on that regards. He knows Otu-san. The blonde wet-haired boy spoke then, turning around to face the hermit, who gasped, but since his gasp was visible, C and Darui actually tensed up, their gaze getting darker. It didn't take much for the air to suddenly spark with tension. The Toad Sage was no fool, however, as he connected the Yugito Onichan asterisk to Yugito ni the Jinchuriki of the Nibi, who was probably already on alert after B's rap, which had come at a higher than normal tone. Still, the blonde boy, with blue eyes, and whisker marks, who resembled a miniature Minato, stood there, on the side of the Kumo ninjas, staring at the man with a perplexed look. Yeah, my nephew here. He's a strong gaki, so we call us bros. We can kick asses, and save daimyos. As B rapped once more, he stared at Jiraiya with an expression that pretty much went. That's one of the legendary Sanins, Jiraiya Sennin, he was the teacher of the fourth Hokage. C muttered, as Naruto slightly felt a bit of shiver in his spine, but why? He was in a hot spring and the water was warm. As he instinctively clung to his uncle's side, he stared with a wide-eyed expression at the old man, who had intrigued him because he was managing to write on paper without wetting it. Naruto. You've been in the water too much. Out now. Yugito snapped from the other side of the baths, as they could hear her quite clearly growling as she made her way out of the female side of the baths. Go Gaki. Even the Shinigami frowns when Yugito-chan is angry. As B grinned at the boy, he actually eased him back on his feet, and pushed him gently on the back, out of the water, and back in the changing room. Naruto silently obeyed with a nod, drying himself and then moving out, just to have his hand grabbed tightly by Yugito, who proceeded to bring him to the room they'd share. That boy belongs to, Jiraiya spoke slowly, but was stopped by C's murderous glare. You're starting the sentence wrong. He belongs to no one, and certainly not to a pathetical excuse of a village which has torn his soul to shreds. The murderous hiss was something that would make even snakes proud. How did you get him? The Sannin spoke slowly. He was weaponless, but so were the Kumo ninjas. The only problem being that, while both sides were soaked, one side knew how to do raiden jutsus and had an entire village skilled in it, and the Hachibi, and the Nibi would probably barge in, and they were four and he was alone. The odds weren't in his favor that night. Why do you care? Darui spoke next. While B simply stood silent, he was probably waiting for a wrong move to barge in. I'm that child's godfather. That wasn't a lie. Minato had wanted him to be the godfather of both his kids, even though one was meant never to know who his father was. So you trained him into calling himself monster. I thought you were a pervert, not a heartless bastard. C spat out words that seemed like venom, more than simple air vibrations on the vocal cords. That wasn't me. I never met the kid before today. Jiraiya's voice was a bit saddened by that. Maybe if he had been at the very least present, in the other kid's life, this might not have happened, but he had first to make sure Naruto wouldn't end up choosing Anbu, and thus ending in Danzo's grasp, a thing which had, nevertheless, happened. Nevertheless, you weren't there when he tried to slit his wrists, for having failed to do a simple chakra control exercise, and nearly breaking his bones from the efforts he made to try and reach B's strength, because he didn't want to be a weight. You were not there the time when he curled into a ball and cried when he saw a blackjack, nor when he went on rampages every time he heard the word Konoha or perfect weapon asterisk. You weren't there then, and you have no right on him now. Darui spoke harshly, making the Sannin's eye bulge at the amount of information, of sad information, that he didn't know about. If Konoha tries something funny, know that Kumo will not sit idly by and watch. He's the Raikage's son, if not by blood, certainly by spirit and soul, and his dream is to become the next Raikage of Kumo, and no one, especially not people who have abused and berated him, will ever have a word on his choices. C actually kept the threatening tone and atmosphere of Darui, a feat which few could actually replicate. I understand. That was all the Sannin was able to say. At the moment he had a too big of a disadvantage to say or do anything else. Sure, he could probably summon Gamabunta, grab the kid with luck and make a mad dash into Konoha, but even then he wasn't sure how the council would take him coming back with a really mad Hachibi and Nibi behind, and the Raikage and his army coming right next. We are going on a mission in the Land of Waves, so we are going to pass through Land of Fire. You'd do the boy a favor not saying anything to Hokage until he's finished his mission. It's his first mission, and I don't want to see the kid having to go back for problems that might ensue. He'd give himself the fault, and it took years to get him to open up. B spoke quietly, and without rapping. A fact that made Jiraiya actually cringe inside, because he knew that usually, that meant he was about to come with a really serious dead threat. If anything happens to the boy, be it Anbu's, Konoha ninjas, or you the culprits, know that I won't stop until the Hachibi will be trashing through the entirety of the Land of Fire, and the Hachibi is on the same wavelength of thoughts as me. Did I make myself clear? Jiraiya nodded, gulping down. Good. We've been in the water enough. With that, the Kumo ninjas left the Sannin alone. And now what do I do? Jiraiya muttered. He could send a toad summon back to Minato, warn him, and then that would probably send him ballistic, then send the council ballistic, then Danzo on a war path, and would probably end up with Kushina wanting her boy back and a war being waged over the kid. The kid seemed happy and with friends, maybe he would warn Minato only, in person, after discovering just how well the kid had been treated in Kumo. Yeah, he'd do that, a couple of months more wouldn't harm anyone. Kushina waited years, that didn't stay well with his heart, but what else could he do? It had been strange, how B had insisted on still taking guard turns, and handing them out to everyone but him. Still, Naruto had shrugged, thinking it was just his bro acting paranoid and safe rather than risky. More strangely, while they had taken 2 rooms, in the end it had resulted with Darui being the only one to sleep alone, while he, Yugito, B and C had slept together in another room. Something about Darui having to wake up and leave earlier than the rest of them, but still. The next morning, they had departed among nervousness, without Darui. There was some strange tension in the air, something which Naruto wasn't able to get his hands on, but that was still there. The meeting point is just a couple of hours ahead, so, Naruto, stop here for a moment. Yugito spoke softly, patting at a rock near the side of the road, where the boy sat obediently, before hearing the young woman ask him. So, do you prefer brown or black? Black, he muttered, though he didn't understand why he had been given a dark blue shirt and a red jacket, and his trousers had been replaced with dark green ones, all in one fell swoop, as he had been handed a fake katana on his back. At least, they had told him it was fake, and had then proceeded to swap his beige leather pouch and bandolier for an utility belt. He felt his hair being touched by Yugito, and something being plastered on it, hair color, a thing he was familiar with from his. He shivered slightly, preferring to forget about it. Then it was the lens's time. Green or brown? Yugito asked him again. Purple. Naruto replied without hesitation, which earned him a small grin from Yugito, whose favorite color was purple. I'll give you green, you flatterer. Then, everyone stopped to admire the woman's handwork. This is special ops hair color and lenses, they will naturally degrade in a matter of weeks, and they won't be easily removed. The hair color is water resistant and only alcohol can remove it, while the eye lenses can withstand a moderate amount of shock before actually falling out. Yugito explained it to Naruto, who nodded. He already had some experience with it, and he shivered once more. Why is it necessary? He asked, perplexed. Naruto, you know you are the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, right? B said, getting in front of the boy, who nodded. Now, I'm going to say that word, and I need you to be a strong bro and take it without flinching, got it? Naruto meekly nodded once more. You know you were of Konoha. A shiver, down his spine, the memory of leaf head protectors, the insults, the mobs, the kicks, and as such, when we meet the other leaf ninjas, who Tazuna-san tasked to protect him till our meeting point, you must hide your real self, at least before Darui-san goes and does his mission, something he was personally tasked to do by the raikage. B muttered slowly. You understand? He queried, once more. Naruto nodded. He had a saddened look on his expression, one of guilt, but B ruffled his hair and grinned. Now little bro, don't be down. You know it's not your fault. That I was born a clown. I'll make you smile in the blink of an eye. Like when I throw in Yugito's face a pie. As he rapped, a nervous tick mark appeared on Yugito's face. So it was you, she snapped, slapping him, and B taking the blow, albeit he could have, maybe, dodged it. C smiled, and then concentrated. 2 people, going to the meeting point. One is a civilian class, while the other is probably high Chunin or low Junin level. Probably didn't have genin teams to spare. Yugito shrugged, let's get going now. Wait, what about my name? Naruto queried, as he began to follow the rest of the team. We thought you didn't want to change it. It had taken days to get him over his name problem, and even then, there were times where he slipped up on writing exams, writing things like it instead of I asterisk. But this is a mission, so it's only a code name. It's different. Naruto replied. Well then, how about N? B queried. Why not Yugao? Yugito muttered. N. I like N. Naruto. Now N said, he always forced himself to smile, or exaggerate his emotions, when he had something bothering him. In that case, the fact that his team had to go to extra lengths to cover for him in his past. They came to a halt on the border between the land of fire and the land of waves, with sea bringing them to a halt, as they had reached the meeting point location. After a moment, two persons appeared on the road, an old man with a sake bottle in one hand, and a strange hat, with a white towel on his shoulders, and a red-haired woman, who sported an Anbu mask on the back of her head, her green eyes fixated in front of the road, and to the group of Kumo ninjas. Well, Tazuna-san, seems like we have reached the Kumo ninjas, although, maybe, I should speak with them for a moment. Tazuna actually nodded, as the woman moved closer, making Naruto visibly tense up, a fact that Yugito, her female senses tingling, didn't miss at all. My name is Kushina Uzumaki, preferring not to use her Namikaze surname, as she still was debating wherever divorce would impact on her daughter's mental health or not, and I was tasked with protecting Tazuna-san till here. Although I must warn you that the mission is not a simple D-level one, as there are ninjas attempting on the life of Tazuna-san. While I intend on keeping protecting Tazuna till the land of waves, I had to inform you, as you might no longer wish to take part in the mission. Kushina silently thought that the more time she spent far from Minato, the less she risked getting arrested for cruelty and murder. B scoffed, but still he had to think about the Gaki, who. I'm afraid of no ninja. We came here to do a mission, and we do a mission. Naruto yelled, raising his right fist in the air. Oh, and who's this young ninja here? Kushina queried, perplexed, while the thought of a group of genins being old was probable, since genins exams happened once every 5 years, and not every group could pass. The only reason for why there was such a difference of age between group members was that, either two hadn't graduated in a long time from the Kumo Academy, or one of their teammates had died and the academy class had even numbers for the usual team selection. At least, she was basing this info off Konoha's system, while in Kumo it wouldn't matter. I'm N and I'm going to be the future raikage. Naruto yelled out proudly. Nice to meet you, N. Kushina smiled at such a display of excitement. I hope your dreams comes true, Datbeo. It might be too dangerous though. Yugito muttered, looking protectively over Naruto, who looked back at her with his puppy eyes of doom *TM*. Fine. The blonde Jinchuriki rolled her eyes in acceptance of the fact that no, she couldn't just snag him away and cuddle him to death in a corner, as Matabi wanted to. Yo, well then we're in. Let the rap begin. As B started rapping, C sighed. I am C, this is B, N already presented himself, and she is Yugito. As C handled the presentations, Kushina nodded. I'm the super bridge builder Tazuna. Let's get going then. And with that, the group started moving. Unknown to them, Kushina's mind was racing, because, really, who wouldn't know the brother of the raikage, as the Hachibi, and who wouldn't know Yugito, as the Nibi? And why would they accept a D-rank mission with ease? Especially when they both had completed, according to the bingo book, A-level missions too, before going on a retirement phase for a while. It was strange, especially because, while she could easily place C at a Junin level, on the kid she had no clue. He simply was too strange to be part of the group, and somewhere, tucked away, there was something else nagging at her, something about the boy's whisker marks. On the other hand, the Kyuubi chuckled in silence, humans always were that interesting. He wouldn't know, because he usually squished them down with ease. Still, if he could manage to get out, just enough to have a little chat with the redhead, the same woman he had seen once in the company of the fourth Hokage, but at the time cradled with babies yet to birth, the same night he attacked Konoha. Then maybe he'd give some fun to the atmosphere, and maybe he'd bring the boy close to the pits of despair, close enough to push him through, and have him finally give in and free him. Then, he could take over the boy's body, and use it to bring forth even more slaughter. Yeah, he'd do that. All in due time. Minato looked at the Kumo ninja in front of him, who had requested an audience, a private one, to speak about important facts. The fourth Hokage hadn't shaved in a while, nor had he taken a bath for a simple yet effective reason. His wife was pissed at him for having lied to her twice, of something that was obviously important not to lie about. Now, instead of actually throwing him out of the house, which would have brought problems because no, the people in the council didn't have to know that Naruto was their son, she had decided to simply make his life a living hell. Before departing in the morning, and thus granting Minato with the prospect of having a pleasant homecoming in the afternoon, she had proceeded to tell their daughter, Katsumi, to spend some time sleeping over with her friends, in another house. Then, with great care and consideration, she had proceeded to booby-trap the entire Namikaze mansion for the 2 days Katsumi wouldn't have been at home. All without telling Minato a thing, so, when he had tried going to the bathroom, he had thanked Kami for his fast reflexes, that had avoided him losing his most important appendage to a kunai launcher position parallel to the toilet seat. However, those 2 days of trap tortures paled in comparison with what the Kumo messenger was talking about. Kumo wished to participate in the Genin's exams that would have taken place in 2 years in Konoha, instead of usually making the exams by themselves, and the raikage would have been present too. The only problem was that the messenger, Darui, had spoken of the possibility for them to have an alliance only on certain conditions. First and foremost, the absolute prohibition of trying to claim any Jinchuriki from their nation for aid in battles. Normally, Minato would have waited and called on the council, but there was something strange, on that being the first point of the letter that I had written to him personally, that and the fact that it was the first sentence without overbearing insults on his cowardice out of battle asterisk. Some insults, however, seemed damn personal, like heartless monster, I'd kick your ass if I weren't busy in Kumo and so on, most of which didn't seem at all connected to anything Minato had previously done, and that was the strange thing. It was more of a pissed off letter to him, but differently from Kushina, he could actually reply to this letter in equal tones, since the raikage knew respect only for those who took him on equal grounding. Darui had stared at the fourth Hokage for a while, now, and was still eyeing the 2 Anbu, hidden, but not to his keen senses, in the room. He had to admit he was toying with them. Every now and then he'd make a nearly imperceptible movement of the torso, and the Anbu would tense, then he would relent, relaxing, and the Anbu would keep being tense for a good 5 minutes, before relaxing once more. It was funny. I had a question, if you can answer that, Darui-san. Minato's blue eyes stopped on the small grin of the dark-skinned man, who was looking at the Anbus and once more assuming a slightly more aggressive posture to see them tense. Anbu, you may leave, he's toying with you, and I can pretty much defend myself. Having said that, the Anbus nodded, from their hidden position in the room, and disappeared, probably having shunshined outside through the open window. Depends on the question, Hokage-sama, Darui replied with ease, looking at the man who had been the probable author of all the sufferance of B's new bro. He knew he stood no chance to actually harm the Hokage, too fast, Konoha's yellow flash, but still, he had been sent specifically because he wouldn't outright snap at him. I received a report about a group of Kumo ninja traveling on a mission through the Land of Fire. Truthfully, first I signed it, gave it, and then I took it back only after a couple of hours to look at it better. As he said that, the blonde spike-haired Hokage tried a smile, but got nothing in response from Darui, who seemed unfazed or uncaring, and it turned out that it was permission for, well, 2 persons I know well to be Jinchurikis, and one I know to be a Junin level, but the fourth, well, the fourth had me surprised, Darui-san. Why is that, Hokage-sama? Darui asked, still not looking troubled in the slightest. Well, as it turns out, it's barely a genin, a 10 years old genin, traveling with 2 Jinchurikis and 1 Junin level ninja from Kumo, and whose name, and general characteristics, has been unluckily spilled by coffee marks months old, so I couldn't get it, but it seems strange that Kumo sent it without looking for mistakes, so I kind of have to ask, who is the boy? Minato actually wouldn't have bothered with it, if it hadn't been the raikage one of his personal sparring partners asterisk. What I am about to say must remain secret, for as long as possible. Darui whispered, slowly perching near Minato, who, nodding, activated the privacy seals. He's the son of the raikage. As Darui whispered that, with absolute certainty, and no whatsoever trace of lie, Minato jolted up yelling out loud, and thanking himself for the soundproof walls plus the seals. He is what? When how with WHOOR what? He had done everything under his nose. Not even Jiraiya had been able to come up with such a secret in all of his travels. Minato was more than sure that the Toad Hermit actually used his excuse of speaking to the spy network to instead go and peek into hot springs baths and other less than moral occupations. That is all I'm allowed to say on the matter, Hokage-sama. I take it you understand why we could not hand over a name, or a face, not without an alliance, obviously. As Darui spoke slowly, Minato nodded. He too hadn't much shared the news of the face of Katsumi around with the other cages. You never knew when a friend became an enemy or not, and as such it was the only safe thing to do. So it's his first mission outside of Kumo, and he's got bodyguards with him. Minato actually wanted to smirk, and make it an offensive comment, as he would probably place his daughter in the hands of his own student, Kakashi, and 2 other genins, probably the top first of the class, but wouldn't be as protective as the raikage. Precisely, the mission was a low D level 1, nothing more than bandits, and it would certainly help him in his first, well, kill. Darui slightly tensed when the Hokage smiled, corking his head to the side with a smile-becoming grin. Oh, Minato then chuckled, popping the cherry aren't we? Anyway, I suppose there won't be a trouble discussing alliances through messengers for a while. You may go back to the raikage's side and inform him that I will send over a letter, just as colorful as his own. Darui nodded at the Hokage's word, and took leave, deciding that the sooner he left the city, the sooner he'd feel cleaner, as he couldn't withstand seeing people so casually stroll by smiling, or happily chatting or selling stuff, and connect them to the stories that Naruto himself had spoken of, more than once, and that he had started to cope with by declaring them nightmares. He passed by the orphanage, just to have a look at the institution, and was surprised when he saw a flash of gray, stinted pink on the head of an elderly-looking woman, Kurusa Haruno, and how she was so happily smiling with a bunch of other orphans. He would have wanted to enter, grab her by the neck and chain her to a rack filled with pointy ends, but he controlled himself. He could feel the Anbu's gaze on him, even though he had done his best to remain hidden. Seize courses on detect the enemy so that you don't get a pike up your rear were useful, after all. He grabbed just a couple of fresh fruits, to eat for the first days of travel, and then started walking at a leisurely pace out of Konoha. He would have dashed, normally, but he wanted to make the Anbu following him a bit more nervous, by acting cool asterisk. Land of Waves. I have not been paid enough to fight you lot. Zabuza of the Hidden Mist pointed his finger at the group of ninjas, Kumo and Konoha together, and then, with a sigh, he added, I'm all but suicidal, and this is suicidal, so, we give up. Tazuna-san, it's been a pleasure meeting you. See you around when, maybe, you aren't surrounded by like a hell of a lot of too high-leveled ninjas. Haku. We're leaving. With those final words, Zabuza actually jumped out of the way of the group, and left them there with an enormous anime sweat drop on their foreheads. Sensei, I ain't gonna train if this keeps up. N slang to B, who sighed and raised his right hand, his index out, before saying in a teacher-like attitude. Bro, the rhymes must come from the heart. All you need is a good start. Then you must grab a rhythm. And make rhymes that become myth. Yo. Chica bo. As B rapped that, Yugito turned to speak to Kushina, who was looking at the scene with a perplexed expression. It's their thing. I tried not to have B corrupt N, but it didn't work out, since it makes him happy. I generally close an eye. Yugito turned his gaze, more soft, towards the boy, and Kushina, as it was something akin to female sense, spoke back. Is he your younger brother? As she queried that, she mentally told herself it wasn't possible they were related by blood. After all, the boy's hair was black, and hers blonde, he had green eyes, and she had dark eyes. If anything, it could have been an adopted one, but still she was curious, as out of all the others, he was the most strange. Adopted? But yes, he is, Yugito replied back, and if anything happens to him I'll probably tear apart Wave Country in an effort to take him back, especially considering this D mission turned A mission. As she casually stared to Tazuna, the man sweated a bit, before trying a nervous chuckle. Zabuza of the Hidden Mist and his associate have left the premises of my sensor range. C stated, and, just as imperceptibly, Killer B stopped being tense, as Kushina too had been. C seemed to be a sensor type, and pretty good at it too, having been the one to realize they were being watched. That's good. My house is nearby too, so how about crashing at my place as thanks for not having left my sorry butt on the road alone? As Tazuna offered that with a smile, taking the lead, the rest of the ninja followed. Kushina started realizing something strange. It was always Yugito, C or B that stood next to her, never the boy, who, without realizing it, ended up moving further away from her each time. This started to puzzle her to no end, as it seemed they were going to great lengths in showing their distrust of her. Oh, by the way, Naruto exclaimed, along the road, I finally got the Raiden, Kangeki-ha down. Want to see it? Elemental jutsus at such an age? Is he really only a genin? As Kushina queried that, B rapped a reply. Bro's got chakra to spend. His control is excellent. So without further delay, elemental jutsus I taught him, oh yehi. That was horrible rapping, and no, Naruto, you don't show off jutsus, you use them when you need them, Yugito muttered, before realizing she had said the first part out loud, that out a bit louder than expected, rolling her eyes over as she saw B feigning being mortally wounded in the chest, and exclaiming out loud. Oh, my wound is fatal. Bro, help me out, her words are lethal. Yugi-chan doesn't like my rhymes. But she can't sing for a dime. Don't make me angry. Yugito growled slightly, her nails strangely elongating of a couple of inches. Now that's not very nice to say, B-san, Kushina butted in, for the female power stuff, probably, I am sure Yugito-san can sing pretty well. She's tone deaf, the reply came like a matter of fact from C, who then dodged a set of claws aimed at where his face would have been seconds before, and the truth hurts her. I am not tone deaf. Yugito exclaimed, as Naruto simply chuckled. Yugito Onichan, you forced Hakaku to give you a permanent discount on ramen if you didn't sing in his restaurant. As the boy pointed that out, Kushina's eyes lit up. Speaking about ramen, I know of this stand in Konoha. She just barely pronounced the name of the village, that Naruto shivered, but kept walking, albeit he was a bit paler. Ichiraku's ramen, maybe if you ever pass by there, you should try it out, it's the best in all of the land of fire, Datbeo. The red-haired woman smiled, as she finished her sentence, frowning just a bit when all she got back was a simple nod of the head, realizing how everyone had seemingly been worried on the boy, even if for just a split second. I see, are you fond of ramen too, Kushina-san? Yugito queried. Yes, I love it. I'd eat it every day if it wasn't unhealthy in the long run. It runs in the family, I suppose. Even my daughter is pretty fond of it. Kushina's gaze turned sad for a moment, as she thought if, somewhere, there was a blonde-haired boy with blue eyes who was walking around in tattered rags asking for spare change to get something under his teeth. The sheer thought of that made her shiver and shake her head. No, Jiraiya was the best spy there ever was. He'd certainly find the boy and bring him back home. We got introduced to it by En-kun here. The brat ate nothing else for a long time. It was hard to convince him that vegetables weren't out to murder him. Yugito replied with a chuckle. Hey, that's true. You can't tell me the contrary, when you refuse onions on the same basis. Naruto replied, feigning offense. En-kun, I hate only onions, you seem to hate the entire range of vegetables, Yugito replied. I say a healthy bro needs some green. Then some red, some white and some yellow. Then he can grow up strong and macho. And conquer women with his strong. B had begun rapping, but was swiftly stopped from ending his sentence by a fierce growl coming from Yugito. Stop rapping, sensei. Ah, C-kun, help a bro out. As B exclaimed, feigning being hurt, C rolled his eyes in annoyance, and sighed. B-sensei, please, we are not looking professional with the ninja from the other hidden village. Don't mind me. I'll talk with this young boy over here, En-kun, right? The other Kumo ninjas snapped their heads to the side, realizing that, in the heat of their exchanges, Kushina, as a good Anbu, had slowly made her way next to Naruto. About what? Naruto queried, looking at the red-haired Anbu. There was something familiar in her. Something about the mask on the back of the head, he couldn't quite place it, but even the name Kushina was familiar to him. Well, how about your hobbies, your likes and dislikes and your dreams, just to pass time until we reach Tazuna-san's house? I'll go first if you want to. As Kushina suggested that with a smile, someone else frowned. Sly girl, was all that Yugito thought, while removing the scowl from her face. Nah, I can do it. My name is N. A silent mental sigh in the minds of the Kumo ninja could be heard. I like ramen, my Otu-san, my bro, Yugito Onichan, C-san, Darui-san, my classmates from the academy. I hate the time it takes for ramen to cook. I hate it when people call me something else. I can't stand seeing people being bullied, and my dream is to become the next raikage, following after my Otu-san. At that moment, Kushina simply smiled, but her brain didn't, at all, refuse the connection. This brat here was the son of the raikage of Kumo. There were ninjas who would have sold their souls for a chance to capture him and demand something back, and that quite actually explained the reason there were 2 Jinchurikis and 1 Junin-level sensor ninja with him. The only problem was the boy's hair and eyes. The raikage was blonde. En-kun, why don't you come with me for a moment? C said, I think it's time you learn how to sense other people's chakra. Yehi. As Naruto skipped ahead, ignoring the fact that it was Kushina's turn to speak about herself, Yugito and B silently moved in a sort of wall formation, with the female Jinchuriki moving a couple steps back, to speak with the woman herself. You made me curious, what would your likes and dislikes be, instead, Kushina-san? Yugito queried with a smile that was as fake could go. Oh well, Kushina replied with another fake smile, sparks of electricity going from the red-head eyes to the blonde-haired Kumo ninja and backwards. I like my husband, the 4th Hokage. I like ramen too, salt ramen in particular. I like Konoha. I dislike anything bitter, and the Kumo ninja who tried to abduct me when I was little, are people who insult the color of my hair, and my dream is to find out the whereabouts of one of my relatives. She was surprised when they didn't react to her being the wife of the 4th Hokage, but that was probably because there was the brother of the raikage there, or something like that, but at the word of Konoha, Kushina confirmed that the black-haired boy had shivered once more. He had something against her village. Oh, I instead like to play the shamisen. I like to eat tekadon and the ramen. I despise the enemies of Kumo or those who would try and harm my little adoptive brother, and I can't stand the color red, and my dream is to make sure Kumogakure becomes the first shinobi village in the world. Both women's veins on the forehead began to pulse, as Tazuna stared at the scene, with a perplexed look, but said nothing, for at least 5 minutes, before gathering enough courage. Guys? He asked politely. What? The two women yelled at him, who made a slight jump back. My house, is that one? Pointing behind him at a wooden house that they had passed by and hadn't seen in the heat of their intense staring contest. See-san, Naruto whispered to the Junin, women sure are scary when angry. En-kun, you have no idea. C replied, with a small chuckle. Land of Waves days later. Naruto was guarding the bridge, alone. He had insisted on the point that, while being fine with him having to be babysat, he could at the very least guard a bridge without anyone else. With the greatest threat, supposedly, removed, there shouldn't have been anything he alone couldn't take. It didn't stop the other Kumo ninja to just so occasionally come and see how he was doing, every 15 minutes, and then simply hide nearby. The only one who wasn't nearby was C, who, on the other hand, was just so casually training on his sensor distance by targeting the bridge, and Naruto status, and doing it all from a nearby hill, that he had chosen just so casually too, albeit it being the closest one in line of air with the bridge itself. Just as Yugito had casually decided to stroll by, and then leave after a couple of minutes, Kushina took her chance. She silently made her way next to En-kun, and startled him with a wide grin. Making the boy jump to the side, in surprise, and having him let go of the kunai he was playing with, that fell to his side, beneath the bridge, but luckily falling on the rocky beach and not in the ocean. You scared me, Kushina-san. What was that for? En queried, taking deep breath to calm down, as he realized his kunai was down there, but not in the risk of getting carried away by the waves. Just thought of some chit-chat without your babysitters around. I take it you don't like the situation you're in. As the red-haired kunoichi from Konoha spoke, C was, at the same time, being distracted by a really annoying brat named Inari who had been tasked, in exchange for 5 ryos, to keep the man as much stressed out as possible. No, Otu-san thinks I can't handle myself, but I can't say it out loud, or he'll get hurt. Kushina tried her best not to smirk at the thought of the raikage, that mass of dark-skinned muscles and straight, stern gaze, being hurt from the words of his son, but I'm no longer a child. I can take care of myself as a genin from Kumo. I see. Well, how is your first mission going for the moment? Boring. Just because Bro and Yugito Onichan are famous and strong, thugs simply run away and there is nothing to do. This is a fake C mission. At most it's not even a Z mission. En scowled as he watched the construction workers head off towards their homes, as the new shift of workers took their place, and I just dropped my favorite kunai. He pouted. Kushina chuckled, moving to the side of the bridge, and then, with a grin, whispered something to En. Look at this. She conjured a chakra chain from her back, making it descend swiftly and roll around Naruto's kunai, before retracting the chain, pulling the kunai upwards and in her hand, and then handing it over to a really surprised Naruto, who took it with his mouth still wide agape. That was cool. Can you teach me that, please? I'm afraid but then a thought crossed her mind, why not? It wouldn't work with the boy, since he wasn't an Uzumaki, but she might get something from it, only on one condition. Which is? En queried, hopeful it was something he could do. Answering one question truthfully. Are you using Anbu class camouflage to mask your real face? As she asked that, Naruto looked at the woman, then, deciding it wasn't so much of a problem speaking about it, he nodded. Yeah, normally my hair is blonde and my eyes are blue, but please, don't tell Yugito Onichan and the others I told you. As he spoke, Kushina took her time imagining the raikage type of blonde, but the more she thought about it, the more N, with blue eyes, started to assume another aspect, one which, no, it couldn't be possible. What were the chances? Hey, now can you explain how you did that cool chain trick? It was N's turn to make questions, and Kushina smiled, before nodding. All right, TT Ibeo, here's how you must do it. First, concentrate your chakra on your fingertips. As Kushina said that, Naruto raised both his hands, and concentrated. It was like doing one of the Raidens, only without actually making the chakra accelerate. Then, you must imagine yourself knitting it. It's something very difficult, and usually, Kushina words died in her mouth, as Naruto, simply, had a pair of blue-hued chakra chains that started to emerge from his own fingers, and that kept on growing and growing, with the boy staring at them in fascination, as he kept mentally repeating to himself to mend the chakra right left left right right left left right. His feat was interrupted by a loud yell, however. N. Come here this instant you. Before Kushina could do anything, a really fuming with anger Yugito had already snapped out of his trance and had made him look with uneasiness at Kushina and then at Yugito, before whispering. Have to go, thanks for the trick. And dashing off towards his Onichan who seemed more keen on grabbing him by the ear and explaining to him how he was a stupid, idiotic imbecile for not having answered the first time for dinner. Kushina stared at the boy, from her spot, imagining him with blonde hair, blue eyes, the whisker marks, with the fact that the chains of chakra were an Uzumaki-only bloodline privilege, that could mean only one thing. That boy over there had a high chance of being her long-lost son. She snapped out of her trance-like state, shaking her head and standing up, when she realized that both Yugito and N were probably already heading towards Tazuna's house. There was only one last proof she needed, one that she could test out right there. Naruto. As N turned around, surprised at being called by his real name, and staring at the red-haired woman, Yugito on the other hand narrowed her eyes, grabbing the boy and starting to dash back towards Tazuna's house. Kushina hadn't gone years in despair to give up the chance that the boy was his son so soon, and she dashed off behind the Jinchuriki, bringing her right hand forward. Chakra Chains Barrier. As Kushina yelled that, chains burst forward from her back, dashing through the air and encircling Yugito, and Naruto who was on her shoulder, in a barrier like made of chains, that, while it seemed to have a lot of air and escape, in truth had none, especially because between one chain pillar and the other, there was an invisible like chakra barrier. Yugito didn't take a moment of hesitation, in letting go of Naruto and turning around. Is this an act of war against Kumo? You're not going to go far, when B and C come here. Yugito yelled at Kushina. This is already an act of war against Konoha. You stole Naruto from it. Kushina replied, angered as she raised her left hand, letting the chains do the talking, as they dashed forward to encircle Yugito. Yugito managed to sidestep them, jumping backwards, and then thanking Kami for the scaffoldings, on which she nimbly climbed, all the while dodging the chains that kept on following her, breaking through the wooden structure, and thus slowing down. Why am I feeling sluggish? She thought, before earning an explanation from Matabi. Cat, that's an Uzumaki-style chain, its purpose is the binding of bijus and the absorbing of chakra from their enemies, she seems a master of it. As a Jinchuriki, I'm afraid it's the worst possible enemy, and you heard her. She can hold the 9 tails, and I don't think it's a boast. Can I say the F word? You need to find a way out. The barrier is a semi-sphere, just go under. That's concrete we're talking about. Can't I transform? That would be worse. She'd just tear me outside. What? How in the frigging hell can she do that? Uzumaki-style chains, do I need to repeat myself? I've got to get Naruto out. Biting her tongue, and making the symbols, she did the only thing she could do at the moment. Kuchio's no jutsu. Neko. Placing her hand on the ground, a cloud of smoke later revealed a Persian cat, with a white and red fur, and a Kumo head protector on her tail. As Kushina called back the left-hand chains, she grabbed onto the kunai she held at the waist, a strange free prolonged kunai. Wait, that's... oh shit. An impulse of chakra later, the yellow flash, the Yondaime Hokage, the one and only Minato Namikaze, stood on the bridge, staring perplexed at the sight of the chain barrier, of a Kumo ninja with a Persian cat the size of a large bulldog, a raven-haired boy shivering in a corner and staring at the battle in fear, and a really angry Kushina. Nobody moved, for the first seconds. They have Naruto, Kushina yelled, which earned her the undivided attention of Minato, who, jumping backwards to the side of his wife, said, "Where are they keeping him?" "The raven-haired boy, it's him. It's Naruto." As Kushina pointed that out, Yugito yelled back, "That's the raikage's son. If you try anything it will be considered an act of war." As she jumped backwards, the Persian cat following nimbly, the Yondaime narrowed his eyes, recalling the events of some days before, when the messenger had arrived, and how some points actually would have worked against Konoha in reclaiming Naruto back, once they learned it out, that sly son of a. This had to be fate's way of making things right. He'd grab the boy, give him back to Kushina, make sure he wasn't brainwashed by Kumo, ask for a meeting and force the raikage into submitting into an alliance or into being in the wrong. Then he recalled about Iwagakure and Sunagakure. They'd just love to side with the raikage, especially on this delicate matter. Wherever he was actually the son of the raikage through adoption or not, it didn't matter. Wherever he was the nine-tailed Jinchuriki or not, it didn't matter. That was his son over there, the son he had given to the harsh hands of fate, and that fate had brought back within his grasp. He'd grab him all right, even if it meant war. Grabbing a scroll from the side of his vest, under his ample white and red trench coat, he swiftly undid the string, releasing simultaneously a barrier of kunais that launched themselves forward, landing randomly in the area in front of him. Kushina, support. With that, he launched himself forward, disappearing into a flash. Yugito bit her lower lip hard. That was a really bad situation. Sure, she was a Jinchuriki, and sure she was the two tails problem. She was against the yellow flash and the Uzumaki who could literally rip Matabi out of her body, which meant death, for her, and she had to protect Naruto who was cringing in a corner, the shock too much. More than that, however, she questioned just where the frigging hell had C and B gone to. Had she turned around, she would have seen a very pissed off Hachibi trying to punch his way through the chakra chain barrier, only to fail miserably with every hit. "I punch like a tornado. I kick like an earthquake. So you damn friggin' barrier. Smash into pieces already," B yelled, as another set of Hachibi's punches produced nothing, impacting harmlessly on the surface. "B. This is bad. That's the Hokage over there. We need to be quick and send a message to the raikage." C replied, trying to reason with Killer B. "C, you go and intercept Darui. He'll probably be going at a leisurely pace, so tell him to go faster. I'll support Yugito, if the damn thing falls." B replied, "I'll have to use the Bijudama. I prohibited you from using that. You're going to change the landscape." C yelled back at the Hachibi form of B, who shrugged. "I'm taking the bro back. Whatever it takes, it takes." Naruto, on the other hand, was frozen in fear. He had thought that maybe not all Konoha ninjas were evil, the woman seemed nice. Then she had called him by his name. How did she know? Did he slip while talking to her? Then she had tried to harm his Onichan, and now they were fighting, and then what? Would they kill Yugito? Why? What did she do wrong? What did he do wrong to earn this? What did he do? Why? Scared? Afraid? Need a hand? The Kyuubi chuckled, reaching out to Naruto's mind. "I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this," were the twirling thoughts of the boy. "You want them to stop, don't you? Come on, accept my power. Let me show you how to make them stop." "No, You're lying. You're lying. Liar. You're a liar. A liar or not, look, he's just wounded your precious Onichan. Naruto raised his eyes and bulged them in shock, as truth be told, Yugito had several slashes across her body, blood dribbling out and landing on the concrete of the bridge. The man stood tall, his face absolutely without emotion, like it didn't matter to him what he was doing to Yugito, like it was just part of the job description, come and make Naruto's life hell asterisk. Then, Yugito got on her knees, panting heavily for the blood loss. Even the regeneration, Matabi. I can't fight him like this. Sorry cat, I'm doing what I can. Screw it all. He dispersed the Neko summon in a flash, Konoha's yellow flash, damn, I doubt the raikage would magically appear out of nowhere, right? That would be a miracle, yeah. No longer interested in Yugito, who was now barely hanging to her consciousness, Minato moved forward, towards Naruto, whose eyes had already started turning red, his contact lenses popping off and falling on the ground. Oh no Udon. Minato didn't finish the sentence, as he swiftly brought his battle kunai in a defensive position, just in time to block a slash from Naruto's pocket knife. Hey kid, calm down. I'm your. Naruto dashed forward, ignoring the man's words, he had to save Yugito, but how? He knew he had to aim at the woman. It didn't matter that he wasn't as fast as usual. He knew what he had to do. His mind was clear. He had. Raiden. Jibashi. It didn't matter to him to dose it, he had to destroy the ground. They were on a bridge, if Kushina lost her footing she would fall and would have to remove the technique. As Naruto's electrically charged, or better yet, overcharged hands touched the ground, Minato swiftly disappeared and reappeared next to Kushina grabbing her and jumping upward, just in time to avoid the destruction of good part of the bridge, by the hands of the very one tasked with protecting it. However, in doing so, Kushina actually had to give up on the chakra chain's barrier, resulting. Hachibi. Bijudama. Aim higher you moron. Ops. The sphere of concentrated white evil chakra and good black chakra threw itself forward, aiming a bit higher, and thus avoiding to actually reducing to ashes both Naruto and Yugito, but flinging against Minato and Kushina, but before it could impact, however, Minato had already transported himself downwards with Kushina, avoiding the blast that went off in the distance, destroying a, till then happy, hill on which a certain Geitu's shipping company had residence. As the barrier was off, however, Minato whispered at Kushina. Just stab him with the chains and we'll bring him with us. In the heat of the moment, Kushina nodded, as there was actually no other way, with B already moving his fists downwards, in his full Hachibi form, to protect the two. With a speed similar to that of a lightning bolt, a chakra chain flew forward, piercing straight through Naruto's abdomen, and as it recoiled backwards, bringing the boy nearer to the two, Minato managed just in the blink of time to get a hold of him, and transport them all out of Killer B's reach. You damn son of a. The rest of the insults, covered with the Hachibis trashing around, actually made the building of the bridge a year-long project, once more, but without Geitu's thug, it actually turned out fine, well, except the scared senseless workers who renamed the bridge the Fury of the Biju asterisk. Konoha Minato's safe house. Naruto. Kushina was worried, she had, quite actually, nearly killed her son in order to save him from the Kumo ninjas. Once in the safety of the safe house of Minato, she had dissolved the chakra chains, taking deep breaths as she looked worriedly over Naruto's fainted body, the wound already closing up thanks to the high regeneration, and to the lack of chakra chains to prevent that. Minato too looked at his son, then at his wife, but, after a brief moment of respite, he suddenly realized the idiocy of what he had done. Kushina, the Yondaime started gravely. Isn't he beautiful in his sleep? Came as a half-dreamy reply from his wife, who was gently caressing Naruto's hair, still raven-colored, while holding his head on her lap. Kushina, you realize what we just did? Minato spoke again, if a bit softer. We got our child back. That's what we did. Kushina replied, staring back at Minato, the stern look on her face saying it all. We had abducted a Kumo ninja, who, if his companions are to be believed, is the Raikage's adopted son. How are we going to explain that? You will tell everyone the truth. He is my son and yours, wherever you like it or not, no matter what will come, I am not going to let him out of my grasp again. He's mine, got it? As Kushina said that, she quite possessively clung to her sleeping boy, who kept being knocked out cold. Fine, I'll come up with something. How are we going to tell Katsumi? Minato queried his wife, who took a thoughtful moment to answer. I'm going to speak with her about it, she'll understand. Kushina replied. You do realize that the Raikage will declare war on Konoha, as will Iwagakure and Sunagakure, unless there's a. Minato's eyes suddenly flashed up, in enlightenment, I've got an idea. Kushina eyed him dubiously, holding on to Naruto like the man wanted to snatch him away any second. Now, I know you want him to be called our son. Minato began, and he already got a growl from Kushina. But if that happens, then I'll probably lose my position, and I won't be able to protect him from Danzo. Kushina looked at Minato with a puzzled expression, not understanding. Danzo would probably understand, as would the council, as retaking the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. It was ours to begin with, but if we do that while revealing that he's our son, then I'll lose my position. Danzo and his war hawk-like attitude will come in, and Naruto will be taken away, by Konoha this time, and trained like a weapon. Kushina's eyes turned saddening, she hadn't thought about that. Now here's the point. We won't tell the people of Konoha, but we will tell Naruto. We'll call for a meeting in the Land of Iron, with Mifune present, and we'll explain the reason behind our actions to the Raikage, and there comes the bargain. Bargain? Kushina queried, puzzled. We'll force him to accept the fact that he should be left to choose between him and his real family, and that we didn't know he had been abducted and we were looking for him. Jiraiya-san will come in as an eyewitness, as I had tasked him to find Naruto, and with Asanin's words they'll have no choice but to let the boy choose. And what if he chooses Kumo? He dreams of becoming the Raikage. Kushina exclaimed, as, deep down, she was worried it wouldn't matter that she was Naruto's mother. We'll ask for 5 years, the same amount of time he spent in Kumo since we last knew of him, Minato replied. By the time it ends, Naruto will probably already be old enough to decide by himself, and maybe, if we work it right, he'll love us as family. I doubt we could do worse than the Raikage himself. Minato, I just want to, Kushina stuttered, looking down at Naruto's whisker marks, and tracing them with the tip of her fingers. I'd abandon him again. I can't do that, Minato. Kushina, it's either this, or Danzo, and a cold-blooded weapon, is not a son. Minato spoke slowly, and Kushina, biting her lower lip, muttered. Kami will send me to hell for this, I know it, I just know it. Give him here. I'll take care of him. Minato whispered, gently taking from Kushina's arms Naruto, and then disappearing once more, to the symbol in the Hokage's office, leaving behind a weeping Kushina. Kumo days later. Team Killer B is back together with Darui. As the most nervous Karui entered the Raikage's office, stared from the vast amount of paperwork he was doing and nodded. Well, let them in all right. Can't wait to hear how Naruto's first mission went by. He'll whine he was bored out of his mind, minimum. There, Karui couldn't finish, because the door was actually removed from its hinges as B entered the Hokage's office covered in dirt, grime and sweat, like of one who hasn't stopped running. On his back stood C and Darui, the two breathing heavily and barely hanging to consciousness, while Yugito, upon reaching the office, simply muttered, "Nar," before fainting outright. Bro, they got Naruto, B spoke slowly, depositing both C and Darui down on the carpet of the Raikage's office. What? The yell was heard even by the gate guards of Kumo, and tiny ripples of water appeared in every lake in the area, as glasses shattered and birds took flight. The raikage's desk was smashed in two in the blink of an eye, as A walked furiously over B. WHO had taken my son. And where the hell were you, bro? Where were you? Bro, it was the yellow flash and his wife, the wife of his is in Uzumaki, she blocked us out with a strange barrier, Yugito was the one inside, she tried her best but against the yellow flash she had no chance, as B slowly explained, A's face turned into full-out fury. This means war. Karui. Go and send messengers to Iwa and Suna, I'm sure they'd like a piece of Konoha. When Karui was about to exit, however, she jumped backwards, because on the doorway stood a slightly pale toad sage, who, nervously gulping, muttered. I have a message for the rake. As A's enhanced fist dashed forward against Jiraiya's face, the hermit managed to sidestep, albeit only slightly avoiding the full front attack, and instead getting thrown against the opposite wall. Messenger. Come in peace. Jiraiya managed to yell, before dodging to the side another lightning armor enhanced fist. Stop running. A yelled, that stupid student of yours had taken my son. Calm down. The Nine Tails is Konoha's Biju. I don't give a fuck about the Biju. At that yell, Jiraiya stopped. What? I don't give a damn about the Biju. I want my son back. Keep the Nine Tails if you want it so badly. As A snorted that, he moved forward, but as Jiraiya assumed a defensive posture, he saw him simply pass by, and reach for a drawer of the destroyed desk, taking out a pile of documents. Documents for adoption, it's a damn 64 amount of sheets, do you think I'd go through this without cause? If it would help get your village one more Jinchuriki, why would you not? Jiraiya replied, shrugging but dodging to the side a lightning bolt. Look, I'm going to tell you a story, and then you'll realize he's better off away from those damn bastards of Konoha, your student included. Should I take a chair? As the sage said that, he got a chair, thrown at him by the raikage himself. Sit down and listen. A muttered in rage, before beginning. Flashback. A was strolling along Kumo, having successfully finished his allotted quota of work for the day, which meant nearly a quarter, or half if you carefully selected some papers and made them disappear under the carpet till further notice. As he was walking along, he realized there was a slight fuss going on in the park, as some boys were yelling over a ball that had been thrown too far, and had ended up downwards, in a chasm that naturally surrounded the city, and that ended in a basin of collected rain water. There weren't cliffs, or rocks, and A recalled fondly the time as a kid he would throw himself downwards, as the basins were quite deep and there was thus no risk in simply jumping down, as long as one did at least a nice jump to avoid scraping his backside against the rocks. He grinned, deciding he would do a nice action for karma, and, after a brief set of murmurs from the kids, who saw the raikage walk forward in awe, he decided to jump downward, earning himself a set of gasps from the kids. That was until he felt someone tugging on the back of his cage's vest, and who was trying desperately to hold him upwards against all logic, even that of common sense. He actually turned around, curiosity taking the better of him and, while falling, realizing in shock it was a young blonde boy with blue eyes, who was incredibly scared, but still wasn't letting go of his vest, and was actually trying to prevent him from falling too fast. He would have laughed at that, if it weren't extremely tragic that A, clearly no more than 7 years old, wished to try and save him from falling down to his doom asterisk. He swiftly grabbed the boy in a hold, hugging him tightly as his back hit against the water of the basin, leaving the raikage unfazed, as he was built of sterner stuff. Are you alright, kid? The raikage was the first to speak, staring straight into those blue eyes of the boy. Those eyes, he had already seen those eyes. At the time, however, the boy had dark hair and not blonde, and even the eye color was different, but the message those eyes sent, that message was still the same. He didn't reply to that question, simply staring at the raikage. Why did you jump down, kid? The raikage questioned him. You were going to fall. He replied, I wanted to save you. That made the cage laugh. You, a shrimp, save me, the raikage. Oh Kami, this is the best laugh I had in years. Why would you save me, huh? As a queried that, the boy replied simply, like he was stating something obvious. Yugito-chan said that you're the reason I have a bed, so I wanted to save you as thanks for the bed. The bed? Wait, you're Naruto-kun, right? As the raikage asked that, Naruto nodded. Why would you thank me for a bed? I didn't have one before. He replied, earning himself a surprised face from A. Oh, but you shouldn't have saved me, a chuckle, only for a bed. Naruto shook his head. It's also for the food, and the hospital, for not being hit in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the night, it's for not shackling me to a wall, and it's also for the clothes, the table, the chair, the... Fine kid, fine, I get it, but I didn't need to be saved. I'm the raikage, I'm the strongest in the village, you know. He actually wanted the boy to stop before he started to go on a rampage on Konoha. The boy was a scrawny little thing, and yet he had been treated far worse than any other Jinchuriki in the history of Kumo, and probably, even of the world. I'm sorry. I didn't know, do I have to go in the cellar now? As the boy queried that, what made the raikage snap wasn't the tone, saddened and filled with grief, it was the eyes. Those eyes were the eyes of somebody who was resigned to his fate, of somebody who would accept it without even lamenting. Those were, now the raikage recalled, the eyes of a broken man. No, I actually yelled, scaring the kid as he was grabbed and brought on his shoulders, you stay on those damn shoulders of mine. As he felt the boy compelling to the order, I grabbed the ball and began climbing back up with ease, just in time to actually see, once on top, that among the child and their parents there was also Yugito, who had a really scared and worried expression. Naruto, what were you thinking? Come down from the raikage's back right now. As Yugito moved forward, I could actually feel the boy shiver, and, smirking, raised his right hand in front of Yugito. No need, Yugito-chan, I asked him to stay there. But, he's drenched Raikage-sama, and so are you. Yugito pointed that out, still uneasy about letting a clearly scared off boy on the back of the raikage. Not a problem, there's a nice sun today. We'll dry off while walking, and without further delay, the raikage began striding, after handing over the ball to one of the kids. So, tell me, Naruto-kun, what were you doing before saving me? The raikage asked. I was looking at the sky. Naruto replied, the clouds are pretty to watch, then I heard the noise, thought it was mob time, and looked down. Mob time? I queried, as he could actually hear Naruto tighten his grip on the raikage's back. Every once in a while there was mob time. The headmistress of the orphanage would grab me, bring me outside in the night, usually late at night, and told me to run while the villagers would follow me with clubs. They didn't want to kill me, only make me suffer, to remove the evil from my soul, at least, the headmistress said that. I don't know if it was working or not, but I know it hurt and that they usually yelled things. No one stopped them from doing that. I queried, perplexed, what about the guards, the Anbus, heck, what about the damn Hokage himself? Guards were the worst. They'd let me be beaten up, and then I'd be given the fault for having started it, they'd bring me back to the orphanage, and I'd have to stay in the cellar, but without the light from outside. One day the headmistress simply forgot to reopen the cellar's small window, so I stayed in the dark for a couple of months. That's why I like it now. I see the clouds, they're pretty. I see, and tell me, why weren't you playing with the other kids? I was dashing from building to building, looking around to see if his brother was anywhere nearby. Nobody told me I could. You could have asked them to let you play with them, they don't know you, but I don't think they would have refused. I never spoke with kids my age till. I was curious, till when? Till I was taken in by the Anbus, They came for me because I was a bad kid, so I was taken. He muttered meekly. I could feel the boy's face press against his back, probably to hide the tears. I see. Well, look, there's my brother over there. Damn idiot not doing his job as a guardian of Kumo. I'm sure you and he will become friends. As the raikage said that, he grabbed Naruto from his shoulder, and holding him on his arm, he first iron-clawed B for having started writing on his rhyme notebook, and having forgotten his patrol, and then he had given Naruto over to B, to try and open him up asterisk. Flashback end. Later on, when he came to me saying he didn't want to go back, no matter what, he called me asterisk Otou-san for the first time. He was literally crying out his firm intention of never, ever, setting foot in Konoha ever again. I don't know what other tortures you subjected him to, but I'm telling you this, it's not that he dislikes Konoha, he is traumatized by the village. If you do not hand him back, I fear he'll simply give in to the Kyuubi and let him roam free once more, as long as it brings him away from that hellhole. As a finished speaking, Jiraiya was speechless. He gulped once, then nodded, and proceeded to summon a small frog, where he wrote a message towards the Yondaime. Deliver it, immediately, to Minato. As the frog nodded, grabbing the message and dispersing into smoke, Jiraiya turned his attention to the raikage, and said slowly, I didn't know about how he was treated, or I would have done something beforehand. I know it's not an excuse, and I understand you wouldn't trust me, but, can I hear more about Naruto's life in Kumo? I was meant to be his godfather, you know. Jiraiya sheepishly brought his right hand behind his head. In exchange, I'll tell you all the official crap that Danzo had on him. That got the raikage interested. Fine. B. Get Darui, C and Yugito to rest, then come back with the package asterisk. The package? Jiraiya raised a puzzled eyebrow. A is in truth A, Karui was about to say with a slight grin, but as interrupted by the raikage. Karui. Go and do secretary work, or stuff, outside. Ah, I wanted to see the package too. Feigning sadness, she left the room. Konoha. Minutes after Minato left the safe house. Minato had dropped Naruto on the couch in the Hokage's office, and had then called a council meeting of urgent matter. When the entirety of the council, Danzo included, albeit on the civilian side and no longer on the military one, had arrived, it was time to begin. I have called you all here, swiftly, because we have found the nine-tailed Jinchuriki. Murmurs of shock echoed through the room, with Danzo being slightly fazed by the event, but trying his best to keep a cold face. We should send someone to retrieve him. He belongs to Konoha, after all. Hiyashi Hyuga, the head of the Hyuga clan, spoke. Troublesome. Do we know if he has any allegiances? Shikaku Nara spoke, sighing deeply. He seems to be with Kumo, but he could have been brainwashed. Minato spoke, and thus I'll need Inoichi Yamanaka and Ibiki to check on him, after he's been successfully brought back asterisk. Kumo. They already have 2 Jinchurikis. Why would they need another one? Those damn greedy bastards. One of the civilians' people side spoke. They should keep it. It's their choice if they want monsters on their side. Another voice came stronger. Are you joking? Kumo with 3 Jinchurikis would be our doom. We need him back, and we need him to become a weapon in Konoha's defense, brainwashing him if necessary. Obviously, this had been the voice of one of Danzo's associates, as Danzo spoke only rarely, and only when he wouldn't endanger his reputation with one side or the other. Enough. We must tread with caution. The last thing we need is a war with Kumo, but we need to do something. Sume Inuzuka roared. The first Hokage divided the tailed beasts among the hidden villages, and the Kyuubi was meant to be of Konoha. History is on our side, as the ancient treaties are too. Another councilman spoke. So, votes for taking the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki back? Minato queried, and as some of the councilmen raised their hands, Danzo too actually, many of the ninja clan's heads did. The majority is in favor. Good, because I kind of already took back the Jinchuriki, as Minato said that with a slight laughter. A set of sweat drops appeared on the faces of everyone in the council. My wife should actually take the credit. She realized it was him, and called me for backup. Troublesome. What will be Kumo's reaction? Shikaku Nara was the first to regain his senses. It will probably be war, but there is a way out. Minato replied, as the council was going on an uproar. Silence. Danzo spoke quietly, immediately earning the silence in the room. What would the way out be, Hokage-sama? It turns out, as a streak of luck, that the boy I randomly choose from the orphanage turned out to be an Uzumaki, like my wife, which would mean that, simply, we weren't taking him back because he was a Jinchuriki, but because he was one of the remaining members of my wife's family. Tearjerker story is a cover, basically. We'll then ask the raikage to give the boy time in Konoha, and then, have him make a choice later on, hoping for the best. That is risky. The boy could, and actually should hate Konoha for how he was treated, unless he was treated far worse in Kumo. Shikaku spoke. Furthermore, if the raikage refuses, all we have on our side are old treaties. We could ask them how they got the boy. If there was any hostile takeover, then we have all the right to claim it back. Danzo replied. It? Minato queried, narrowing his eyes. A weapon deserves no him asterisk. Danzo replied with a scoff. I see. Well, we need to decide where to put him, stressing the word. My wife wanted to have him nearby, so I was thinking about an apartment near the Namikaze compound. In that way, if something were to happen, we'd be able to intervene directly, as the area has more Anbu patrols than normal. We could directly insert him into the Anbu program though. The Anbu commander, an Anbu with a dog mask, spoke. If he already is with Kumo, they probably trained him. That is why, in order to make sure he chooses Konoha, I was instead thinking of having him live a normal shinobi life. He'll do the academy with his peers of age and then, graduated, we'll give him a Konoha headband, if he passes obviously. It should strengthen the bond with the village, and he might actually like not being treated like a weapon, a fact that Kumo probably did. As Minato spoke, Shikaku narrowed his eyes, but then shrugged. It could work, so all that remain is the raikage's option, and the boy's predisposition. So, everyone in favor of this way? As Minato asked, there were still some growling in the underground, but nobody refused it too much, as Danzo gave his approval, all the while thinking. So Monster-kun comes back to his home, I'll give him a nice welcome back, hehe. On the other hand, just as the council finished deliberating, Naruto woke up, jolting up and jumping to the side. Looking frantically around to try and take a look at the surroundings, and understand where the hell he was. He took slow steps towards the windows of the office he was in, a pretty big office, and stared in the distance, at the village that was surrounded by trees. It was familiar, so much familiar that he was shivering and trying desperately not to remember why, but it was too late. All it took was the sight of the gate, the symbol of the leaf on it, and Naruto's eyes bulged for a brief second. Escape. Need to escape. He dashed for the open window, jumping downwards and running on the roof, till he had to take the jump for the over one. That's when he felt a hand on his shoulder, belonging to a masked dog Anbu. You won't take me again. The Anbu was actually surprised by the sheer strength of the boy, but more than that, by the Anbu class taijutsu that the boy seemed to possess, as it grabbed the dog masked ninja by the wrist, and threw him over his shoulder, before keeping up his dash along the roof's side, jumping on the roof of another house. The Anbu, recollecting his thoughts, decided to whistle for aid, and as a bird masked, monkey masked and wolf masked Anbu appeared, he pointed at the boy and they all nodded. Naruto wasn't going to get captured again. No, he didn't want that. He didn't want 3 hours of sleep and the rest of training. He didn't want the cold water on the face, the bruises, the taijutsu training that broke his bones. he didn't want that, no, he didn't want that. The walls of the village were big enough, and probably trapped, to force Naruto to aim for the gate, but as he jumped midair to actually land on the ground, he was intercepted by the dog-masked Anbu, who proceeded to punch him in the stomach, while the wolf-masked and the bird-masked Anbu appeared behind the boy, bringing him down on the ground, as the monkey-masked one held a kunai in front of his face. Stop, in the name of the Hokage. The dog-masked guy muttered, standing to the side of the monkey-masked. Naruto didn't speak, he needed a way out, he desperately needed a way out. You know, I could have helped you, but I don't want to. I'll enjoy thoroughly seeing you suffer, so next time, when I'll want to give you power, you won't call me a liar asterisk. The Kyuubi chuckled, as the boy could do nothing except try to use his strength, but all he obtained back, as it was an Anbu hold, was to nearly break his own arms. Let me go, he snapped. Still awake. I thought I'd hit him hard. The dog-masked Anbu muttered, anyway, what were you doing in the Hokage's office, Kumo Lapdog? So it was his office. I don't know. Naruto yelled back, let me go. I say you can calm down, and we'll bring you back to the Hokage, and... No. Naruto's eye remained blue, but his determination suddenly doubled, and the Anbu, well, he was forced to let go, as his hands turned numb. Huh. Before he could say anything, sparks of electricity flew in the air around the boy. Raiden. Kangekiha. Futon. Daitapa. Naruto's special electric air blast. As Naruto dashed forward, air sending the Anbus flying away, electricity numbed their bodies, slowing down their reaction rates long enough for the boy to actually run towards the gates. Kami be damned. The dog-masked Anbu muttered a curse, as only his swift replacing with a log had saved him, and had left him the only one able to dash after the boy. Have to use it, after all, he muttered, putting one hand under the mask, and then lifting the forehead protector, long enough for his only Sharingan to see the light. Running time is over. As he shunshined straight in front of the boy, his eyes locked with those of the boy, before the boy fell on the ground, caught in a genjutsu. Dog-masked Anbu was puzzled, however, as he covered his Sharingan once more. Those eyes, they weren't those of a cold-blood murderer or Anbu from Kumo, those were the eyes of a scared kid who just wanted to leave. Sensei, just what have you done?